So just a bit more of an introduction. So to Natalie's left is Rajamannar. He is the Chief Marketing Officer of Mastercard. Beside Raja is Kasia Kieli. She is the President and Managing Director of Warner Brothers Discovery Poland, which is also under the same family as CNN. So wonderful to have you. And to the left of Kasia is Mironiuk. He is a successful, I know many of you already know, successful tech entrepreneur and also an expert and pioneer in AI.
Welcome.
I want to start with the news events of the last year, 15 months, Russia's invasion of Ukraine. And Kasia, I want to start with you and ask from your perspective the role of the media, both in covering the war, but not just even in terms of documenting the events of the war, but also pushing back against disinformation, pushing back against propaganda. Walk me through your perspective and your role in the media.
Yeah, well, obviously this has been a very, very challenging time for media industry, but obviously for the country and most importantly for the Ukrainian people. And when the war broke out, the first thing was kind of from our perspective was we were doing what everybody was doing, but what we are best in. So on one hand, it was about information. And we were the first to start covering the war at 4 a.m. in the morning, immediately. Went into a special newscast to cover, but on the other hand, it was about helping. How can we help? And having the impact that we are having on the society, on the country, how can we also, within this help, in a sense, fight the misinformation? Because there was a lot of misinformation. It was a lot about what can I do? Natalie was just talking about unbelievable mobilization of the Polish society, of Polish people taking refugees to their homes. But there were so many questions coming to us, how we do it, what do we do, where do we go, how can we help those people? And we tried to organize on those two fronts immediately. And we also tried to do what we know how to do best, is kind of to bring help and to collect the money, collect the help. And one of the things we did was the first and the biggest concert for Ukraine, together with Ukraine, which we broadcasted to 50 markets, including Ukraine. And we collected over $2 million, which we immediately gave to Polish Humanitarian Action, because they know how to help in war zones and how to help refugees. Today, the situation is a little bit different, because it's about, as you said, it's about telling the story. And it's telling the story by covering through news, through reportage, and telling the true story and fighting the misinformation. And, our reportages, we were lucky enough, we're together with sister companies, and we're lucky together to have a global platform that we can put that on. And some of the reportages on Ukrainian war that were prepared by the Polish journalists were actually broadcasted across the world on Discovery Plus and on our platforms to make sure that we don't forget about it. We don't kind of, it's been a year, and we want to make sure that it is top of mind.
Yeah, even 15 months
after.
Can
I just add one comment, just for our visitors who don't live in Poland? It's difficult to underestimate the role that TVN has in Poland. We all owe you a lot, and thank you for amazing reporting. We know where we can find the truth in Poland. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you for saying that. Raja, in terms of Mastercard, how has Mastercard tried to assist for those who have been impacted by the war?
Yeah, it has been quite an intense journey, I would say. So firstly, we had to make sure that our team members and the people are all safe. So that was the first order of business. Then the second is, we have found that the statistics are about 7 million Ukrainians actually came into Poland. And of course, some of them were going from here to other places. But then all of them were coming only to the urban centers. So what we wanted to do is we have got incredible amount of anonymized data, which tells us what is the cost of living in different parts of the country. And why should everyone come and settle in the big cities? Why can't they go to the smaller cities? So we created an app called Where to Settle. And then you sort of, as a Ukrainian family who has come, you say how many children, what kind of role you are looking for a job, and how many pets do you have, if you do have, and so on. And it sort of guides you in a very simple way, intuitive way, as to what are the options for you, where are the jobs available, and how much do you get paid, what's the cost of living, can you survive there or not? And this was so good that we felt very thrilled that the Polish government started promoting this, which was a big deal for us on the one hand. And we are not doing it for ourselves. Basically, this is to ensure, from a people perspective, that's one part of it. And likewise, there are a lot of women, and you talked about women and the amount of imbalance which is there. It happens even more so when people are particularly vulnerable and women get ignored. So we were trying to put our might behind the women who wanted to start businesses, to give them mentoring, to give them opportunities for funding and so on. And at the very initial days itself, we counted up to 80 businesses which started very rapidly. And things like that we have been continuously doing, and it has been a very significant and long journey. And also a couple of other things we would do is also to raise the awareness for the Ukrainians outside of this region. So we had done, for example, a fashion show, which might look trivial at one level, but on the other hand, what we said is, here is incredible talent. They are very aesthetic and artistic in there, and they design fashion wear, which we sponsored the New York Fashion Festival, Fashion Week, and we had these displayed over there. So there were a series of small and large initiatives that we were doing collectively with the hope that there would be a positive change. And because we are also very metric driven, we are also trying to measure what is the impact. And if something is not giving the right kind of an impact, we would immediately do a course correction and then keep doing it. So that journey is not yet over. We made the first several steps over the last 1 year, but this problem is going to sort of stay on for some time. And we are trying to prepare ourselves to help these folks on an ongoing basis.
Yeah, I will say it's interesting over the last year or so how many Ukrainian entrepreneurs that I've interviewed on CNN International who, even despite the war, have managed to continue on with their businesses, trying to expand from solar energy to even fashion designers who I've interviewed who, even in spite of everything, we're all witnessing, are still continuing to pursue their entrepreneurial endeavors.
So true.
Yeah, for sure. Miron, I want to bring you into the conversation in terms of technology. It appears, certainly in terms of social media, that we are hyper-connected. We have never been more connected. And yet, you could also argue that in a lot of ways, a lot of mental health challenges have continued to rise. How do we manage in this period of hyper-connectivity?
Oh, that's
a big question.
It's a big question for some working in tech, and I'm not sure if I should give the answer I'm about to give you, but I'm doing my best to avoid being connected.
You're doing your best to avoid?
Yes, and to spend as little time as possible with my phone. So what I do...
I would not have expected you to say that.
So what I do, I removed all apps like Instagram, LinkedIn, even the app to manage my mails, because I realized I just keep checking and I keep building these habits when I'm waiting somewhere and I just keep checking. So instead, I installed Kindle. So I do the same thing, but at least I'm reading. So it's a healthy habit. So I can still access my email, it's necessary, but I need to log in via browser every time. And this additional layer of friction makes me to do it less frequently.
So I think the last decade, it was social media, right, that we really saw explode. I think this decade, as has become clear as of late, it will be artificial intelligence, which I know is an area that you have a lot of specialty and focus in. One, there has been a lot of concern, certainly over the last few months, about the potential impact of artificial intelligence. And I wonder from your perspective if that concern is warranted, or if this is something we tend to see whenever we are on the cusp of a new technology. What do you think?
So let me start with a quote from one of my biggest heroes, someone I really admire, Spider-Man. With great power comes great responsibility. With great power comes great responsibility. We need to remember that AI is just a tool. It's a powerful tool, but it's just a tool. It's up to us, up to all of us, how we'll use this tool. Let me give you an example, a tangible one. Imagine a brick. You can use a brick, or you need more than one, to build a house, or you can use the same brick to break someone's window. It's not what the inventors of brick had in mind, but it's a pretty useful tool if you want to break a window. The same thing applies to AI. You can use AI to build our bright future, or you can use AI to destroy what we've built so far. So, and all of us here, we are in charge. And that's something that is very important to be in charge when it comes to riding the AI wave, because otherwise we'll be subjected to this revolution and will end up really poorly.
I think the concern has been, have we let the genie out of the bottle, right, in terms of AI? But I would love for you to speak to maybe some examples of how AI could contribute some social good.
Each of us can use AI for good or bad. Kasia, can you share how many reporters do you hire?
Well, we have over 1,000.
1,000. So fire half of them, replace them with AI.
Well, for the record, I just wanted to say that this is not the way we're looking at it. Definitely not as a replacement tool, but as you were saying, more of a support tool. And, we're nowhere near your know-how or knowledge or anything like that, but definitely we're testing and experimenting and seeing how this can support the work of the reporters, support the work of the company to make it easier. And I think it's a long way, and we have to learn together. And talking about a little bit when you asked me about misinformation and how do you fight it, and obviously one thing is about, I agree fully, that power and freedom comes with accountability and responsibility. We stand for independent journalism, but we understand it's about responsible journalism. Having said that, we alone are not going to fight the misinformation war. It's about the tech platforms coming together. It's about all of us coming together and making sure that this reliable information, checked, fact-checked, and having journalistic values has a place that is visible and prominent.
And can I answer it?
Sure.
And so that's amazing. That's why we appreciate TVN so much, because for you, truth is your greatest commodity, your greatest asset. But the reality is that truth is not a good business model. That's true. And you can have other media platforms in Poland and all over the world that will be just chasing clicks, right? And this is why, and AI can be amazing with chasing clicks, because if you don't care if the article is based on facts or not, just keep producing them, keep getting clicks. This is why there are certain things we can do ourselves as business, we can self-regulate, but there are things where we need governments to step in, and this is a place where we need the government to come and say, we need to limit the use of artificial intelligence in media and social media.
I think to piggyback off of that, the need for regulation, but I think the more we see fake news and disinformation proliferate, the more truth becomes valuable and actually becomes a great business model. But obviously, I'm biased. I am in journalism and I am in the news, so we'll leave it there. Raj, I want to bring you into the conversation here in terms of Mastercard. When I think technology, when I think financial services, I think data breaches, I think privacy issues. I mean, for a company like Mastercard, which has access to so much private data, what is Mastercard doing to protect that private data?
That was not in the script. So firstly, I want to clarify a couple of things. We do not have access to a vast amount of data. We do not know who is the customer, what's the person's name, nothing. What did they exactly buy? We do not know. All we know is there is a card number, such and such a number, which made purchase for $100 at this shop at this particular time. That's all we know. So there is what you call as PII, personally identifiable information, we have no access to it. Second, even to sort of prevent any backtracking to identify individuals, we aggregate data completely. And if we anonymize, even the card numbers we take away and we put some artificial tokens when we are doing data aggregation. So what happens is, particularly with the advent of AI, the ability that we now have to read into that data, aggregated data, can be humongously helpful to the governments, as well as to not-for-profit organizations, and of course to for-profit organizations as well. I'll just give you one simple example. Like, in Pennsylvania, there is a small place called Erie. Now, in Erie, Pennsylvania, they were trying to build some kind of a shopping center in the center of the place. They needed investment. Investors would not want to go and put money in a place like Erie, Pennsylvania, of all the places. So when we actually showed with our data, we call it data for good. So we take this analysis, make it available to researchers, make it available to academicians, in this case to the government, to say, actually, a lot of people who are living in the suburbs, they do come to this particular location for restaurants. They're making other kinds of shopping out there. When they're coming for all this, there is enough amount of potential to actually set up a full-fledged mall in this place. And that data, they went and presented to investors, they got the investment. Now what happens, it creates a whole economic activity around downtown, which otherwise can quickly dilapidate and go into bad kind of circumstances. So we do tons of stuff like that. And as a policy, what we have, and as a principle and a philosophy is, we do believe that privacy is a fundamental human right. You cannot ever violate it. That's absolutely true. And before you are a business, you have to put yourself as a consumer. What data is there about you that you want to be collected? Do you know what it is being collected for? Do you have a right to be forgotten? Do we know in advance whether this data is being sold or not, and do you permission it? Do you get a share of whatever the revenue that other company is getting? I think these are the kind of principles which have to really seep in very deeply. And we have been following this very religiously, and I feel very proud of it in terms of how we try to protect the data of the consumers. If I can just give one quick example, 30 seconds or less. Now I went for some medical procedure a few years back, and I get a message from my hospital after 5 years saying that, congratulations, our data has been breached, our data warehouse, your data is gone, your social security, your address, your date of birth, every damn thing about you is gone. But don't worry, we'll give you a subscription for $7.99 for the credit bureau monitoring. It's like insult over injury, right? If you don't know how to protect my data, you have no business to collect my data. And to do some procedure, which is a minor outpatient procedure, why do you need all this data to begin with? So there is a data greed amongst companies, which we should actually attack. And secondly, there should be ways in which they should be held accountable to keep the data safe, which today is not existent.
Yeah, agreed.
Can I add one point? Sorry, I keep adding points. I think this is extremely important, but it's a legal challenge, it's a technical challenge. So I think the problem is that, in the example you gave, it's just impossible to verify. The moment the data leaves your phone, it's impossible to control it. That's the reality. So, but there are technologies that are available, and this is, for example, how my company is trying to be a role model here. So right now we are storing all data of our users, over 1 billion people, in the cloud. We are in the process of transitioning to edge computing. What it means is that the data will be stored on users' phones. And then the permission, if we can have access to the data or not, will be stored on blockchain. So the moment the user revokes the access, if they will not want us to have access to this data, there's nothing we can do. We just lose this access immediately. And we cannot send this data to someone else. So that's something that we are starting to do with as Cosmose. We hope that more companies will follow, and that eventually we as business community can lead by example, and eventually to become law of the land, and everyone will have to do it.
I think that's an interesting...
One thing is that we need to remember data is powerful, and we need to find a way to use it. It will improve our lives. We can save time, we can save our lives.
Right.
But we need to do it in a smart way.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting point, and I think it's curious to see how U.S. regulators might feel. You think about the concerns, for example, with ByteDance and TikTok, and sort of how some of that data is being stored.
But the first reaction of regulators is what Italy did. They just ban things without trying to understand it. It's not the smartest thing, really. China will not ban things, and in a decade when we realize we were stupid, it's too late. And the AI's models will be trained on values created in China, not our values here in the European Union or America. We need to be mindful of that.
I want to pick some of your brains about more personal techniques. We've just sort of talked about some really stressful things just in that last 5 minutes or so. Natalie, I want to work you back into the conversation and maybe ask a bit more in terms of when we are living through turbulent times, whether that turbulence is coming externally or whether it's internally. Walk us through a bit more in terms of your process and even the conversation about whether this is just passing or whether this is something that requires a bit more reflection and work.
Well, I think that always human connection is the best. And if there's anything, I think, on the bright side of AI, I think it's making us value human connection in a different way because it's the thing that cannot be replaced. And in terms of the second part, you were saying if we should worry about it or not. I think it's good to remember that so many times in history have seemed like the end of the world, and to know that that's something that every generation has dealt with, but also to take it seriously because we obviously have challenges like climate change that are markedly different from any past generations. So I think, we have to keep the seriousness of it alive, the hope of it alive, that there's something possible that we can do that would make an impact.
Speaking of something we can do that makes an impact, Raja, I hear that you are an avid meditator, and I'm not sure if you guys remember Natalie saying a few minutes ago that she tries to meditate. I also try to meditate. I also don't think that I'm very good at it. So help us understand some of your techniques in terms of mental health and meditation in your practice.
Yeah, I guess this is going to be the topic of my next book. And seriously, I'm actually going to do that. I actually studied a number of, productivity gurus and some of the top CEOs and how they manage and everything. And what has helped me, and I have got my own formula, meditation is not only good for your mental health, for your focus, and for your grounding, it's also the best productivity tool, number one. Number two, sleep. We underestimate the value of sleep. Your body needs 8 hours of sleep. If you sleep less and you say, I'm sleeping for 3 hours and you feel like a hero, you're actually being stupid. Because the body needs time to heal and organize the memory in the brain, etc. Sleep is the second. Third one, I think in this day and age, there is too much of rich food. And it does untold amount of damage to the system. So I'm a vegan. I have been a lifelong vegetarian, but in the last 5 years, I have turned a complete vegan. It's a day and night difference it makes, actually. So that's a third. The last one I would say is, it's always very interesting for me. I've been classically trained in music, and music sort of heals me at so many levels. It's fascinating, and there is no specific genre, but I listen to any music where there is rhythm, melody, I'm there. It's fantastic. Lastly, I would say the purity of soul, and this might look a little weird, but the purity of the soul you experience when you are either with small babies or you're with animals. And I spend a lot of time with animals. And you look into their eyes, you look into their soul, and you relate, you connect, it takes you completely away to a different plane. And I'm more partial to dogs, and I always believe dogs are better than human beings. And I got into trouble for saying this multiple times, but these are what I would do actually to take care of myself.
I'm also a pet owner, so I can completely agree with the innocence of animals and children. I want us all, because when I look at this panel, I see storytellers in different facets, but all storytellers, myself included. Kasia, let's start with you and the role of TVN, the role of media, in terms of being a storyteller, but I also think in terms of journalism, really having a privilege and an opportunity to give voice and power to those who may not otherwise have it.
Yeah, well, we are fundamentally, we are storytellers. This is how the company, this is the DNA of the company. This is the purpose of our existence, and we do believe that storytelling is very powerful. This is the way the history is being told. This is the way our personal stories are being told. This is how we learn about reality. And to your point, we do stand very firmly on the principles of freedom, but also diversity. And that's been a very important part of our storytelling, both in our news coverage, in our reportage, but also in entertainment, because entertainment plays a very important role to give the voice to those that are often marginalized or are not heard enough, to minorities, to LGBT communities, to women. We've been talking about women, but to victims very often. And look, this is not very easy. It's not easy. Sometimes those topics are very difficult, very controversial. Sometimes we tackle taboo, but we feel that it's important. It's socially important, and when you do it, when you give the voice to those different people, it's an important development, and diversity makes us stronger. We have a lot of examples, on the entertainment side. We've been the first the first broadcaster in Poland that did Prince Charming, which is first gay dating show in this country. We do a lot on our reportages and news coverage to cover transgender children or challenges for the families. And so we believe that having a courage to talk about those issues is important. Specifically, I just wanted to also maybe mention women, because we launched also a diversity tracker in our news organization, where we track the participation of women experts on air, talking about different issues, political, social issues on our news networks. And we are, at the moment, we're at 40%, which is the highest for Europe, the highest percentage of women experts on air for all the European news channels.
Wow, that's incredible. And we don't have much time. Natalie, in terms of storytelling and when you're thinking about projects, what are the stories that excite you most, or the stories that you feel like are not necessarily being told as much?
I think that the things that excite me the most are getting to see women in lights that we have not seen them before. I think the more variety that we see, the more possibility we can imagine. Movies and television have this power of bringing people together and caring about someone else's life for an hour or several hours, and that can be really magical and expands our imagination of what people can be. So I think for good and bad, it always drives me crazy when someone says, oh, if only we had a woman president, everything would be more fair. And I'm like, no, women are humans, and there's good and there's bad. And the more we can see women in all of the colors, the more I think we can see women and girls as human.
As they are, more nuanced roles. And then Raja and Miron, let's start with Raja. In terms of how to build meaningful engagement, because I think we have lots of engagement, lots of connectivity via social media, but how do we go beyond that and actually connect and relate in a meaningful way?
So firstly, we moved away, or beyond rather, the concept of storytelling. We said you can tell stories, but actually what you need to do is to help create stories that people would want to experience. So we moved away from advertising-led marketing to experience-led marketing. So we curate and create experiences that mean something to the individuals. So there are 10 areas in a person's life that we are focusing on, like music, movies, arts and culture, shopping, environment, philanthropy, and so on. So we got 10 areas in total. And in each one of these areas, we say, what is meaningful to you? What matters to you? It's not about cheap commercialism or to make people spend more money. Help people follow their passions. Profits will follow. that will happen as a consequence. But if you start chasing profits and doing commercial kind of an engagement, it is very short-lived. And this has been paying us rich dividends because now we are one of the top fastest growing brands in the world. When I took over at Mastercard, we were the world 87th most powerful brand in the world. Today we are at number 12. And if you look at my marketing budget, it's a tiny fraction of what my competitors have. And so it pays us. So we are actually seeing evidence of that. And the brand, there is what we call as brand intimacy and brand connection, which is actually happening extremely well.
So start with passion and the profits will follow.
Correct.
And then Miron, in terms of building meaningful engagement, I mean, you certainly have a following. How do you move beyond just likes and clicks to something more meaningful?
So I think I built a meaningful engagement with you yesterday.
I heard a lot about the keynote. It was a hit.
Thank you. A lot of you approached me yesterday, and I had some amazing conversations. Some of you approached me with a hope that we can really create new Silicon Valley here in Poland. So, by the way, Raja, for you and Natalie, we have the best engineers in the world here in Poland, and we need to take advantage of it. We are number 1 when it comes to engineers, number 50 when it comes to GDP per capita. So we need to catch up. So some of you were hopeful, some of you were skeptical. Can we really do it here in Poland? Can it happen in Poland? Yes, it can, but I think it needs to start with us, with business and tech community. So if you want to get, I think we spoke about this with Kasia briefly. Let's come together as a tech community, let's create a list of recommendations for ourselves as the community that we want to implement when it comes to data and artificial intelligence. Basically, let's self-regulate ourselves, and hopefully we'll lead by example, and eventually that will become a law for everyone. And if any politicians want to talk to us, we should talk to them. We should be blind when it comes to political colors, because all of us have one thing in common. We want this country to be successful, and we want our kids to have better lives than we had. So please message me on LinkedIn, but message me. Don't send me a friend's request. We are not friends yet. Just message me so I can respond. Thank you.
Miron, Kasia, Raja, Natalie, thank you one, thank you all.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.